Welcome to the programme. Israel's Foreign Minister, Israel Katz, has warned the country is close to a decision on an all-out war against Hezbollah in Lebanon. He made those comments on the platform X as Israel's military generals said they had signed off on plans for an offensive in Lebanon. Now, hours earlier, Hezbollah published drone footage reportedly filmed over the Israeli city of Haifa. With the details, here's Charlotte Hughes.
This video was allegedly taken by a Hezbollah drone. The Lebanese militant group claims the undated footage shows the Israeli port of Haifa in strategic military, energy and civilian infrastructure. The video prompted a furious reaction from the Israeli foreign minister, who said that Hezbollah's leader had threatened to attack Haifa's ports. Israel Katz warned the group that it would be destroyed if an all-out war were to occur between the two. This as the Israeli army said on social media that plans for an offensive in Lebanon had been approved by senior officers.
As part of the situational assessment, operational plans for an offensive in Lebanon were approved and validated, and decisions were taken on the continuation of increasing the readiness of troops in the field.
Meanwhile, Amos Hochstein, Joe Biden's envoy, is in the region to try to ease tensions at the Israeli-Lebanese border. Cross-border clashes with Hezbollah have intensified in recent weeks.
The conversations that I had here today in Beirut and the ones that I had yesterday in Israel, both are being conducted because the situation is serious. We have seen an escalation over the last few weeks, and what President Biden wants to do is to avoid a further escalation to a greater war.
Claiming to act in support of its ally Hamas as well as Gazans, Hezbollah started trading fire with Israel a day after the Hamas attacks on October the 7th. Since then, the violence has killed at least 473 people in Lebanon, a majority of them fighters, but also dozens of civilians. According to Israeli authorities, at least 15 soldiers and 11 civilians have been killed in northern Israel.
Well, for some analysis on this story, I'm very pleased to be joined now on the programme by Filippo Dionigi. He's a Middle East expert at the University of Bristol. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thanks for joining us today. Look, first of all, it's long been an assumption of analysts that neither Hezbollah nor Israel want a full-scale war. But in the light of what we saw in that report there, both the comments by Israel's foreign minister that a decision on an all-out conflict is close, and Hezbollah apparently flying that drone over Haifa, is that calculation, do you think, now changing?
I think the calculation on the grounds remain more or less the same. I think neither Israel nor Hezbollah are interested in a direct confrontation in a larger scale than what they are already doing. But the reality is that they are locked into a process of escalation that keeps going upwards and risks of going out of control, and therefore creating the condition for a larger war in that sense. What I think we saw already since the beginning of the conflict is a war on two levels. There is the war on the ground, and then there is also an information war, a war that is exchanged through declarations and threats and accusations from both sides. Hopefully, this latest episode is still the kind of episode that takes place at the information level, with Hezbollah showing off its aerial capacity to access Israeli airspace and acquire information on the ground with a level of detail that it was unexpected, and therefore Israel retaliating to that kind of threat with the presentation of possible plans of attack. Again, as the declarations that you've shown in your report show, these are declarations. They indicate the possibility and the readiness of Israel to undertake these plans, but they are not yet a reality on the ground. And my hope is that it will remain only a threat, a verbal threat, and not a reality that will change the ground in the near future, at least.
And let's talk about some of the specifics then on that apparent Hezbollah drone flight over the Israeli city of Haifa. just technically, I mean, how did that happen? How was the drone able to fly what seems to be pretty low over Israeli airspace and not be detected by a very sophisticated Israeli defense system?
This is the question that everyone is asking at this point. Israel has the latest technology, the most advanced military capacity in the region, and the fact that Hezbollah has been able to acquire that footage in one way or another, in fact, shows that there are holes in this defense system, and that Hezbollah might be capable of doing things that Israel itself may not even expect in reality. And that's been part of the game since the beginning. Hezbollah has been progressively showing off greater military capacity. It has shown capacity to fight using air-to-surface missiles as well. It has been showing capacity to use missiles that mount a camera on and therefore are capable of spreading propaganda to its own advantage. And therefore, again, this is something that indicates the fact that this conflict, should escalate to an all-out war, will have consequences that we cannot predict simply because we don't know exactly what Hezbollah is capable of. We know its capability is much greater than Hamas for sure, but we don't know exactly, again, what this conflict may lead to.
And on the Israeli side, I appreciate what you were saying in your first response, that we need to see this really as a sort of part of an information war, rhetoric almost from both sides, rather than an indication that an actual full-scale war is imminent. But if I can just, ask you about some of the language here, the Israeli army saying plans for an offensive in Lebanon have been approved and validated. I mean, that's quite specific. The Israeli army not normally currying in sort of rhetoric around something like that. Does that kind of language concern you?
I think it's raising the tension up again a notch significantly. And again, we saw that language going up and down since the beginning of this war. But again, we are at this point seeing a level of engagement in this conflict that is unprecedented. We saw also that this morning Israel has carried out massive attacks in southern Lebanon and near Tyre as well, using its own air force, meaning again that those are not only words that can actually be substantiated by facts on the ground, by actual military activity. So yes, it's concerning. But then again, there are also other declarations that have been given in the past. There is part of Israeli military leadership that doesn't see the purpose, the interest for Israel to engage in an all-out war with Hezbollah. Let us not forget that Israel has already fought a long war with Hezbollah in the past, which ended in 2000 with the withdrawal of Israeli forces, then resumed for a month in 2006. And the experience of Israel in this country has always been very negative, in fact, devastating for Israel itself. So they may have learned the lesson that engagement with Lebanon may not be convenient at the strategic level. What is Israel going to get out of a war with Hezbollah in Lebanon at this point? It's hard to imagine. It will be enormously costly at the human and at economic level. It will produce further insecurity for Israel rather than creating greater insecurity, and probably will not achieve any meaningful objective in the short term, but probably also in the medium to long term.
And just finally, these tensions, of course, coming as the US envoy Amos Hochstein has been in both Lebanon and in Israel in recent days. What is the American strategy right now? And is there any evidence that it's working?
No, I'm afraid the evidence that we have so far is that this strategy has not been working, has been characterized by partisanship towards Israel. Hochstein has previously demonstrated being a capable diplomat and has managed to solve other issues. But in this respect, it seems like the situation is stuck. What initially was the strategy was asking Hezbollah and Lebanon to basically implement fully UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which meant also the withdrawal, or at least partial withdrawal of Hezbollah's weapons north of the Litani River, which it means north of the Israeli-Lebanese border and then create a buffering zone which would have created greater security through the greater deployment of the Lebanese armed forces, and perhaps also a greater deployment of the UNIFIL mission, the peacekeeping mission that is operating in South Lebanon. That process has not led to an agreement. The latest request was basically trying to go to Hezbollah and ask to Hezbollah to force Hamas to accept a ceasefire. If a ceasefire is reached between Hamas and Israel in Gaza, Hezbollah's stance is that it will also suspend its hostilities towards Israel. But that request, rather than being realized by Hezbollah, has been instead met by the publication of this video yesterday, which in fact has increased tension and has further exacerbated the sense of insecurity of Israel, and therefore triggered the reaction that we saw today with that declaration, but also with the operation on the ground in Lebanon.
Filippo Dionigi, great to get your perspective, sir. Thanks very much.
Thank you.